Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor. It's the sixth day of January. It's the 2 year anniversary from the events of January 6, 2021, that so many in this town like to call an insurrection. 1,000 people arrested, and yet, strangely, none of them actually tried and certainly not convicted for insurrection. But it doesn't matter. It's an insurrection. Just go with it, we're told. Joining us right now is the journalist who has covered January 6th like none other, with a skeptical eye, Julie Kelly from American Greatness. Julie Kelly, happy anniversary, I suppose.
Happy Fedsurrection Day, Larry. Here we are, 2 years. We
Fedsurrection.
survived. Many people thought we wouldn't, but here we are, still
Well,
standing.
listen, as frustrated as people may be over the events going on in the House of Representatives and the inaction over getting a speaker, I mean, I am actually a little frustrated, in not because I care about Kevin McCarthy or who the speaker is, but because I want the committees to form and the investigations to begin. So maybe we can get some new facts out there about January 6th.
Yes, I think it's really important, and this is what I've been talking about all week and obviously all day, is that no matter who the speaker is, no matter how the committees are formed, it is imperative that they follow up on the investigation into January 6th. Not what we saw the sham committee do, even though I think some of the transcripts that they've released are very interesting and have some new details that should be fully explored, but also, Larry, to exonerate the hundreds of innocent Americans who have been ensnared in this retaliatory, vengeful prosecution, having their lives destroyed. And Larry, it is ongoing. We now have almost 1,000 defendants. DOJ has said they're going to try to get to 2,000 total cases. This will be the biggest, by far, biggest criminal investigation in DOJ's history. A 4-hour disturbance where most people committed, if anything, low level offenses and didn't even realize they were committing what they now are being told is a crime.
Yeah, they were told they were trespassing when they walked through a door opened for them with by the Capitol Police. Uh,
Right.
Julie, by the way, you heard my opening. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Has anyone been tried, or let alone convicted, for actual insurrection? Because that is a federal crime. It's against the law to lead an insurrection. Anyone guilty of insurrection yet?
No. In fact, the only reference to an insurrection charge was the criminal referral that came out of the January 6th committee against Donald Trump. So,
Ah,
but yes, no one has been charged with insurrection. You've got about 18 people who've been charged with seditious conspiracy. Two men actually have been convicted of it, shockingly. Not shockingly, because the trial's in Washington, D.C. But no, nothing related to an insurrection. Larry, if you
hmm.
were going to describe January 6th based on the overwhelming charge that's been levied against DOJ, it would be called a parade, because the offense that is levied the most often has resulted in the most plea agreements is parading in the Capitol, Class B misdemeanor, low level petty offense that this DC District Court never even deals with. But here we are, hundreds of parading cases flooding the court system in DC.
Parading in the Capitol. Wow. Julie, you mentioned the January 6th committee, and you mentioned the fact that the only mention of insurrection is connected to Donald Trump. I read with great interest the discussion of this individual, Ray Epps, the very
Mhm.
strange case of Ray Epps. For those of you who don't remember, this is the guy who was caught on video the night before and the day, January 6th, encouraging people to storm the Capitol, encouraging people to plow in there. A lot of the protesters are like, well, we're not going to do that. We don't want to do that, but he was a central figure all the way around. And in his testimony, he said that he had texted people to say, hey, I started all of this. Is the
Mhm.
reason why we didn't see him in prime time in Liz Cheney's hearing there, and the reason why no charges have been levied against Ray Epps, because they have to have Donald Trump be the leader? They can't have an individual who actually, it appears, did drum up all of this, because it's got to be Donald Trump or no one.
That could be part of it, Larry. I think that's an interesting assessment. But I do think that he sort of represents, for our side anyways, the tip of the iceberg in terms of agitators who are clearly on camera provoking the events of what happened that day, yet not only are uncharged, have been defended by people on the January 6th committee, defended by the same news media who insists anyone who participated in January 6th is an insurrectionist, a domestic terrorist, a traitor. But yet they all leapt to Ray Epps' defense. Very interesting. But I
Hmm.
will say, aside from the text that he sent that said, brag to his family how he helped orchestrate what happened, he also, based on his testimony, was on restricted grounds for at least an hour. That is a crime in the eyes of this Department of Justice, and for which several people who didn't even go inside the building have faced criminal charges. So not only is it interesting they're defending him, but they sent no criminal referral. The committee and DOJ now 2 years later still has not charged him with anything.
They're going to claim, well, that's because he cooperated so fully and gave us all the information and regretted what he did. But could there be something else at play here? Is there any connection between this guy and the federal government, federal employees, Justice Department, FBI? Has anyone looked into that yet?
So they asked him, the investigators asked Ray Epps during this interview many times if he had worked for or was working on behalf of law enforcement or federal agencies. He said no. So we'll take him at his word. This was a sworn interview. That doesn't mean that there was not another party or another interest that he was working on behalf of. He talks a lot about his son. And I'm not going to disparage any innocent people because we have enough of that going on with January 6th. But just because he wasn't working for a federal agency did not mean that he's not working for another party. We know there was a months long operation by powerful interests, including Democratic Party honchos, who were putting together this post election scenario of what was going to happen. So there are a lot of people that he could be working for. Maybe he really was just there on his own to accompany his
Yeah.
son and some other people. And we certainly don't want people unfairly charged, but the
No.
explanation by the government and by the committee as to why he remains uncharged just really doesn't make sense to a lot of people, especially since we do know that there were FBI informants working months before January 6th in some of these groups.
Finally, Julie Kelly, we only have about a minute here, but you mention often when we have you on the need to release all of the videos from inside the Capitol. Have we ever gotten a clear answer, either from the Democrats who had just been in leadership or from Capitol Police, why they won't release all those videos?
So there's about 14,000 hours of surveillance video. It was designated highly sensitive government material in March of 2021. Every clip basically is under protective order if it's used in a January 6th case. They claim they can't release all the video because it will give ideas and inner workings to future insurrectionists. Well, that's not why. And now that we have so many unanswered questions, as to what was going on outside the building and inside the building before the first breach at around 2 o'clock. They need to release that video. This should be a no brainer for House Republicans. Congress has that video. They own that video because it technically belongs to Capitol Police, which is part of the legislative branch. They should get it. They should upload it. They should let the American people see for themselves what happened the entire day there on January 6th.
I only have time for a yes or no answer here, Julie Kelly. Do you trust that should Kevin McCarthy become Speaker, he will ensure that that happens?
No, I'm sure you
I hear you.
expected that.
I kind of did. Thanks, Julie Kelly. Great stuff as always at American Greatness, and thanks for joining us again. Love having her. More to come on O'Connor tonight.